There are some words that can shake decades of carefully preserved memories. Not because they're loud, not because they're cruel, but because they force us to look at a life from an entirely different angle. For generations, the world has known Carole King as the warm voice behind timeless songs about love, hope, and healing. She became the soundtrack to first kisses, broken hearts, weddings, lonely nights, and second chances. Her music has comforted millions of people she has never met. But what if one of the greatest writers of love songs spent years wrestling with emotions she could barely put into words herself? Who was the man who brought her so much joy and so much pain? Was he the love of her life, her greatest mistake, or simply someone whose shadow stretched across every chapter that followed? Carole has spoken openly about heartbreak, betrayal, forgiveness, and emotional wounds throughout her life. Before we uncover that extraordinary journey, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us until the very end. To understand the ending, we have to return to the beginning. Long before stadium concerts, Grammy Awards, and the iconic album Tapestry, there was a little girl growing up in Brooklyn, New York. Born Carole Joan Klein on February 9, 1942, she entered a household where education mattered, curiosity was encouraged, and music filled the air. Her father, Sidney, was a firefighter with a love for the piano. Her mother, Eugenia, had once dreamed of becoming a teacher and recognized something unusual in her daughter's abilities almost immediately. Before many children were learning to read, Carole was already displaying an extraordinary ear for melody. Music wasn't simply entertainment inside the Klein home. It became another language. She learned piano at an early age and seemed to understand harmony almost instinctively. While other children practiced scales because they were told to, Carole sat at the keyboard because she genuinely wanted to discover what came next. Teachers noticed. Friends noticed. Eventually, everyone around her realized they were watching someone whose relationship with music was almost impossible to explain. During her teenage years, rock and roll exploded across America. Young musicians dreamed about becoming performers, but Carole found herself fascinated by something different. She loved creating songs. She wanted to understand why certain melodies made people cry while others made them dance. She became captivated by the invisible architecture behind great records. At James Madison High School, another ambitious young musician crossed her path. His name was Gerry Goffin. Unlike Carole, Gerry was drawn toward words. He possessed a remarkable ability to express complicated emotions through lyrics, while Carole instinctively knew how those emotions should sound. Separately, they were talented. Together, they became something extraordinary. Their partnership began almost accidentally. One wrote the music. The other wrote the lyrics. Within a remarkably short time, they discovered they could finish each other's creative thoughts. Publishers noticed the chemistry almost immediately. Soon they found themselves working inside the famous Brill Building in Manhattan, a place often described as a songwriting factory where future classics were created behind ordinary office doors. The rooms were small. The deadlines were relentless. Competition surrounded them. But somehow the young couple kept producing songs that stood above the rest. They weren't writing for themselves. They were writing for artists who would carry their music into homes across America. Hit after hit followed. Songs like Will You Love Me Tomorrow, recorded by the Shirelles, changed popular music forever. It wasn't simply another teenage love song. It explored vulnerability, uncertainty, and emotional honesty in a way audiences hadn't quite heard before. The success came quickly. Then came another hit. Then another. Soon, Gerry Goffin and Carole King had become one of the most successful songwriting teams in the business. While still incredibly young, they married after Carole became pregnant with their first child. From the outside, it looked almost like a fairy tale. A gifted young couple. A growing family. A career filled with chart-topping songs. Money was finally arriving. Recognition followed. Their names became respected throughout the music industry, even if many listeners didn't yet know who was creating the songs they loved. But public success has a remarkable ability to hide private struggles. Behind closed doors, pressure never stopped. Deadlines kept coming. New artists wanted new songs. Publishers expected another hit every week. At home, they were raising children while trying to balance marriage with relentless creative demands. The same partnership that made them musical equals also blurred the boundaries between work and family. There was almost no separation. Arguments about life became arguments about songs. Arguments about songs became arguments about life. Carole often appeared calm on the outside, but she later reflected that she struggled with confidence for much of her early career. Despite writing songs that millions embraced, she didn't naturally see herself as a star. Performing in front of audiences wasn't initially her dream. Writing was. Creating was. Finding the next melody was where she felt safest. Yet even during those remarkable years, subtle cracks were beginning to appear beneath the surface. Friends noticed moments of tension. The demands of fame were changing both of them. Success doesn't always strengthen relationships. Sometimes it magnifies every weakness already hiding inside them. Neither Carole nor Gerry could have imagined that the partnership responsible for so many unforgettable love songs would eventually become entangled in heartbreak, betrayal, emotional exhaustion, and choices that neither of them could undo. And as the hits continued climbing the charts, another story was quietly beginning. A story that would reshape not only their marriage, but Carole King's entire understanding of love itself. By the mid-1960s, Gerry Goffin and Carole King seemed to have everything that young dreamers could hope for. They had become one of the most celebrated songwriting teams in America. Their work had helped define an era of popular music. Artists lined up to record their songs, and music publishers trusted them to deliver hit after hit. From the outside, they looked like the perfect creative couple. But appearances can be remarkably misleading. The same years that brought them enormous professional success also brought growing emotional distance behind closed doors. While they continued creating music together, the marriage that had once felt full of promise was beginning to unravel. Carole would later speak candidly about those years in interviews and in her memoir, describing a relationship that had become increasingly difficult to hold together. She loved Gerry deeply, but love alone wasn't enough to protect a marriage under constant strain. One of the greatest challenges came from Gerry's struggles with mental health. He experienced periods of severe emotional instability that affected both his personal life and his work. At a time when mental illness was poorly understood and rarely discussed publicly, neither of them had the tools or support that might be available today. The situation became even more painful as Gerry became involved in relationships with other women. For Carole, the betrayal cut deeper because it wasn't only about broken promises. It shattered the sense of security she had built her life around. The man who had helped her write songs about trust and devotion was now creating wounds that no lyric could easily heal. Years later, Carole never tried to erase that reality. She acknowledged the pain honestly while also recognizing that Gerry was struggling with problems that extended beyond their marriage. She resisted turning him into a one-dimensional villain. Instead, she described a complicated human being whose brilliance existed alongside profound personal difficulties. That balance would become one of the defining characteristics of her storytelling. She refused to simplify complicated people. As the emotional distance between them grew, so did the pressure of maintaining their professional partnership. Imagine sitting beside the person who had broken your heart, then being expected to create another timeless love song together before the day was over. For most couples, that would seem impossible. For Carole and Gerry, it became reality. The music continued. The smiles in public continued. The professional success continued. But privately, the marriage was reaching its breaking point. Eventually, the divorce became inevitable. For Carole, it wasn't simply the end of a marriage. It was the collapse of the future she had imagined as a young woman sitting beside Gerry at the piano. The dreams they had built together no longer fit the life they were actually living. Divorce left her carrying multiple roles at once. She was a songwriter, a mother, a public figure, a woman trying to rebuild her confidence after profound emotional disappointment. Many people expected the breakup to end her creative momentum. Instead, something remarkable happened. Rather than disappearing into the background, Carole slowly stepped into the spotlight herself. For years, she had been far more comfortable writing songs for other artists than performing them. But as her personal life changed, so did her willingness to share her own voice. That transformation led to one of the most important albums in popular music history. Released in 1971, Tapestry wasn't simply a commercial success. It became a cultural moment. The album spent an astonishing number of weeks at the top of the charts and connected with listeners in a deeply personal way. Songs like It's Too Late, So Far Away, and You've Got a Friend felt intimate, honest, and emotionally lived in. Many listeners heard strength, Others heard vulnerability. Some heard both at the same time. Although people often tried to interpret every lyric as a direct autobiography, Carole repeatedly explained that songwriting doesn't work that simply. Personal experiences certainly shaped her work, but her songs also blended imagination, observation, and universal emotion. Still, it was impossible to ignore how authentic those recordings sounded. They came from someone who understood heartbreak firsthand. Success, however, didn't erase loneliness. Following her divorce from Gerry, Carole searched for happiness in other relationships. She married Charles Larkey, a bassist who had played with her band. They shared children and built a life together for a time, but that marriage also eventually ended. Later came a marriage to songwriter Rick Evers. That relationship proved deeply troubled and ended after just a few years. Evers died in 1978 from a drug overdose shortly after their separation. Years later, Carole married Idaho rancher Rick Sorensen, but that marriage also ended in divorce. To outsiders, it sometimes appeared as though the woman who had written so beautifully about lasting love struggled to find lasting peace in her own relationships. But life is rarely that simple. Carole never stopped believing in love. She simply learned that love and permanence aren't always the same thing. Throughout these years, another role remained at the center of her life: motherhood. Raising 4 children while maintaining an extraordinary career required sacrifices that the public rarely saw. Fame often creates the illusion that celebrities live effortlessly, but Carole frequently spoke about wanting a life that felt grounded and genuine. Eventually, she found comfort far away from Hollywood. She settled for many years in rural Idaho, embracing environmental activism and a quieter lifestyle. Nature became a source of healing. Instead of chasing constant attention, she sought peace in mountains, rivers, and open skies. That choice surprised many fans. One of the biggest stars in American music had deliberately stepped away from the spotlight. Yet emotionally, it made perfect sense. She wasn't running away from success. She was running toward balance. Over the decades, interviewers repeatedly asked Carole about Gerry Goffin. There was every reason for bitterness. There was every reason to speak with anger. Instead, her answers gradually changed with time. She acknowledged the hurt. She admitted the marriage had caused deep pain. She recognized the betrayals and the disappointment. But she also continued to acknowledge Gerry's extraordinary talent and the creative bond they had shared. Even after everything that had happened, she never denied the remarkable music they created together. That complexity fascinated people. How could someone hold both gratitude and heartbreak at the same time? How could a person remember betrayal without allowing it to define an entire life? Those questions lingered for decades. Because despite the divorces, the awards, the acclaim, and the years that had passed, there remained one relationship that audiences could never stop wondering about. Not because it ended, but because its emotional echoes never completely disappeared. And by the time Carole reached her 80s, she looked back on that chapter with a level of honesty that only time can provide, revealing that the greatest battle wasn't deciding whether Gerry deserved forgiveness. It was deciding what forgiveness truly meant for herself. Time has a way of changing the questions we ask ourselves. When we're young, we often want to know who was right and who was wrong. We look for heroes and villains, believing every painful story must have a clear ending. But as the decades pass, life becomes harder to divide into simple categories. For Carole King, the relationship that shaped her life more than any other was also the one that left the deepest emotional scars. Carole has spoken openly about betrayal, heartbreak, disappointment, and emotional pain. She has never hidden how difficult her marriage became. Yet she also spent much of her later life trying to understand the complicated man behind those memories rather than reducing him to the worst things he had done. That emotional honesty is what makes her story so remarkable. When Carole and Gerry first met, they weren't simply falling in love. They were building something almost impossible to describe. Together, they created songs that became part of American culture. Their partnership wasn't based on coincidence. Gerry had an extraordinary gift for expressing emotion through words. Carole had an equally rare ability to transform those words into melodies that felt timeless. Each completed what the other began. But creative genius doesn't protect people from human weakness. As Gerry's mental health struggles became more severe, the emotional foundation of their marriage continued to crack. His affairs shattered Carole's trust. The excitement that had once surrounded their partnership slowly gave way to exhaustion, uncertainty, and loneliness. For years, she tried to make the relationship work. She wasn't simply trying to save a marriage. She was trying to save the future they had imagined together. Eventually, she accepted that some relationships cannot survive, no matter how much history they share. Their divorce ended the marriage. It did not erase the connection. Long after they separated, Gerry remained woven into Carole's life because every performance of their songs carried a piece of the past. Every audience applauding, "Will You Love Me Tomorrow," "One Fine Day," "Up on the Roof," or "The Locomotion," was also celebrating a partnership that had once existed between two young dreamers in New York. The music outlived the marriage. So did the memories. One of the most striking qualities about Carole's later interviews is what she chose not to do. She never built her public identity around resentment. It would have been easy. Audiences often reward bitterness because it creates simple narratives. A betrayed wife condemning her former husband is a story people immediately understand. Carole resisted that temptation. Instead, she acknowledged that Gerry suffered from serious mental illness during periods of his life. She recognized that his actions caused tremendous pain without pretending they happened in isolation from the struggles he faced. That doesn't excuse betrayal. It simply recognizes complexity. Her willingness to hold both truths at once speaks to a rare emotional maturity. She could love what they had created together while grieving what they had lost. She could remember the joy without denying the pain. Perhaps that's why so many listeners continue to connect with her music decades later. Her songs never promise perfect endings. They simply remind us that human emotions rarely fit into neat categories. When Gerry Goffin died in 2014 at the age of 75, many wondered how Carole would respond. Her tribute surprised people who expected anger. Instead, she honored the remarkable songwriter she had once loved and collaborated with. She acknowledged their shared history and the extraordinary body of work they had created together. There was sadness. There was respect. There was gratitude. There was no public campaign to rewrite history. That response revealed something important. Forgiveness, at least for Carole, didn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. It meant refusing to let the hurt become the final chapter. Over the years, she has often reflected on the healing power of music itself. Songs gave her a way to express feelings that ordinary conversation could never fully capture. When words failed, melodies continued speaking. Perhaps that's why Tapestry still resonates with new generations. It isn't simply an album about romance. It's an album about survival. About finding strength after disappointment. About learning that vulnerability isn't weakness. About discovering that a broken heart can still create something beautiful. Even after decades of unimaginable success, Carole never seemed interested in presenting herself as someone who had all the answers. Instead, she embraced life's contradictions. She became an environmental activist, devoted herself to causes she believed in, continued performing when inspired, and remained deeply connected to the music that had shaped her life from childhood. Awards accumulated. Honors followed. She became a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, received the Library of Congress's Gershwin Prize, earned the Kennedy Center honors, and continued to be recognized as one of the most influential songwriters in modern history. Yet behind every achievement remained the same woman who had once sat at a piano in Brooklyn, searching for the perfect melody. The fame never erased her humanity. If anything, it made that humanity more visible. Looking back across more than 8 decades, Carole King's life isn't defined by one failed marriage, one painful betrayal, or one complicated relationship. It is defined by resilience, by the remarkable ability to keep creating after disappointment, to keep trusting after heartbreak, to keep writing songs about hope after personally experiencing loss.